Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be talking about the short range outlook, warmer temperatures on the way for the east, and it's already currently present. In the west, we experience cooler and more storminess conditions, and soon that will spread to the east as we see several days of severe weather setting up over the course of the next week. If you do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing with your friends, and let's get right into it. So first, we'll start out with surface analysis of the Weather Prediction Center. Given it's nighttime, we can't really look at any satellite imagery and get a clear view of what's going on, but this graphical map gives us a pretty clear representation. So right now we have a series of cold fronts dripped over the northern tier of the lower 48, mainly focused in portions of the north central and Pacific Northwest. We have a couple of low pressure systems, kind of stationary, not moving much, as well as the stationary front, so that's all where we have some foggy, dreary conditions going on. Aside from that, though, it's very warm. We have a very broad high pressure in control in the southeast U.S., which is acting as if it's a heat pump, which is causing this abnormally warm surge of air through the eastern two-thirds of the U.S., okay, especially the eastern half of the U.S. And then in the west, you get the opposite effect, where it's a little more cooler over in the west. But that should flip, and we'll talk about that as well in the longer range. So looking at the National Weather Service alerts and indices kind of gives us another picture of what's going on. We'll work our way west to east, starting in the north central U.S. Bunch of high wind advisories all associated with the low pressure systems, as well as some blizzard warnings, winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and winter storm watches all associated with that low pressure system, but it's very localized and mainly focused towards the higher elevations. Desert Southwest, relatively quiet. A little pair of frost advisories near Sacramento in California, so we're going to watch that, just representing the cooler temperatures that we currently have in place. Go into the central U.S., very quiet. Usually is that way when we have a trough in the west and then a ridge in the east and central U.S. And then we do actually have some severe weather in portions of northern Alabama, as well as western Georgia, northwestern Georgia, more focused, where we're watching that. Pair of dense fog advisories that lines from Baltimore up through New York City, mainly for the overnight hours and into early tomorrow morning. And then when we go up to upstate New York and northern two-thirds of New Hampshire, we have some flood watches, believe it or not, because we have a low pressure sliding through. It'll kind of cut through central portions of Maine. That's why we have winter storm watches for the northern third of Maine, arguably. And then to the south, we have those flood watches in the upstate of New York and New Hampshire, which is honestly pretty rare. Usually we get winter weather able to sneak up there. Higher elevations could have a chance at some mixing. So let's talk about the severe weather threat. That's the main thread of the story of this week, I would argue. So here's your current slight risk. 2% tornado threat, not big threat, but it's there. So some brief, quick spin-ups are definitely possible. Wind 15% and hail 15% hatch risk. So wind and hail are certainly the most present threats as of today. Into day 2, it looks more interesting. Okay, we get 2 areas of enhanced risks. One north of St. Louis into Chicago. This mainly is focused towards the Midwest. And then another further south into Texas. Those are where we're watching for the most intense severe weather. Major cities include Chicago, Aurora, Naperville, Joliet, and Springfield. And then a slight risk encompasses that in a much more broader area, and the marginal outside of that, and then a general thunderstorm risk. So mainly focused across the central U.S. There is a very potent tornado threat there, 10% as well as a hatch risk. So that means it's really going to be focused and much more present than today's tornado risk, and possibly more significant. This is mainly focused, I'd say, south of Chicago, though you are in the hatch risk. Once you get south of Chicago and I'd say north of St. Louis, that's kind of your corridor of highest chance of localized tornado threat. And then another one further south and west into Texas, where you have another 5% hatch, but the strongest is further into the northern Midwest. Day 3, one more risk. We watch this move a little more east. Right now, just a slight. Wouldn't be surprised if enhanced gets mixed in there. I'm also watching the expansion of this risk further into the mid-Atlantic. There's been some trends where we get more instability, more warmth, as well as more sun. So if that were to occur, the general thunderstorm risk, marginal, would likely increase up a category or two. So we're watching. Right now, major cities like D.C., Baltimore, and marginal, though Philadelphia and New York City just in the general. We'll watch that very closely over the next few days. Now, days 4 through 8, relatively quiet, not watching anything too significant, but the next few days will be very, very interesting. Now, let's get into some short-range mesoscale guidance. So this is the RGEM Canadian model. Here's your severe threat right now. It's actually an overnight threat, which does make it a little more dangerous, though this happens kind of in the earlier portion of the night. Once you get closer to dawn, it starts to fizzle out as you lose a lot of that daytime heating effect. To the north, you kind of have a clear boundary right here. Your 540 line, very north. I mean, even north of Maine, Pacific Northwest, North Central U.S., all mainly draped. It's a very tight boundary, though, so that's also why you have high wind advisories in this area, because you have a tight gradient between warmer and colder air, which is able to mix down higher winds. Along that boundary, you also get a storm system. Okay, this is what we're also watching. With that high pressure starts to move out, it is pumping in warm, moist air from the south. Okay, you get a low pressure to form way out here in the west. It kind of takes that flow itself, takes a bunch of moisture from the Gulf and portion of the Pacific, as well as colder air that overruns the northern edge. So you get snow to break off in near the 540 line, mainly further north, and then rain that happens south of it. It's a pretty north system, and you get severe weather, okay, because you have such rich, warm, moist air combined with daytime heating, high dew points, high temperatures, etc., as well as bulk wind shear, which leads to that tornado threat. This is the most interesting one. This is where you have your enhanced risk for these areas, so this is what we're watching. And then to the north, you do have a wintry side, but that's relatively more limited to extreme northern areas, okay? And portions of Michigan, for example, more of an icing threat. We have to get further into northern Wisconsin. Minnesota could get some light snow. It's not impactful snows until you get further up into Maine. So you watch this low. It's a cutting low. It cuts well west of the Appalachian Mountains. So this low brings rain for much of the eastern seaboard, okay? Only exception being Maine, except we have to watch that icing risk. Maybe if this comes a little earlier, you can watch that icing attempt to get its way into Vermont, for example. There's some cold air damming, as you can see with this 1031, but it's fleeting, and this low is strong and cutting well west. If it was cutting along the Appalachian Mountains, that wintry risk could be further south and east. However, since it's cutting, or further south and west, but since it's cutting so far west, you get a big time bout of warm air advection, so cold air is quickly ushered out, low level cold air, which is why you have ice and snow to the further north area. So Caribou, for example, you start as snow as you get into the morning hours of Wednesday, then you get some sleet that tries to mix in at around 6 p.m. Wednesday evening, and then it gets sleet and freezing rain, which is very dangerous, as we all know, and into the morning of hours of Thursday, maybe a little bit of rain, but won't really melt anything as it's out by then. And then big time cold in the back, so you will get a little bit of a colder air push towards the end of this week. That's why most of the areas along the east will be warm now through Thursday. Friday is a different story, and then we watch another system behind that. So let's kind of look at model temperatures with the RGEM. Again, this is 84 hours out, so this takes us relatively the end of the week. So we're watching that gradient. It's going to be warm, though. I mean, this might be a little aggressive, but you have mid to upper 80s in portions of Kansas, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, up in Illinois, and even portions of southern Iowa. So we have to watch that and see how tight this gradient is. This warm air eventually pushes east. Your warmest day for the east. Tomorrow will be warm, but Wednesday I would say is the warmest day. If we take a little zoom into the closer I-95 cities, I mean, it is some aggressive warmth that this model is showing. 85 degrees, for example, in DC, 84 in Baltimore. Philadelphia gets up to 78. New York City gets up to 75. Boston, however, you're kind of held on by this cold wedge, so you're closer to like 45, maybe 50 at best. So we'll watch how much the warm air is able to advance. Your warm day actually might come, which is pretty interesting, at the overnight hours of Wednesday. So not really warm day, but it'll be a warm night when you get overnight hours of Wednesday into early Thursday, where you could peak at around 63, 64 degrees, 9 to 10 a.m. In Boston before the colder air comes through. So it could be a little weird, interesting scenario there. But for areas south and east, south and west of Boston, it's going to be warm. It's going to be very warm. Even just west, okay? Cold air damming signature is what's keeping you guys colder. And then, for example, when you go up into Maine, it stays freezing. So shows you how tight that gradient really is. Lastly, in the video, we're going to look at the 500 millibar outlook, long range outlook. What are we looking at? As I did say, it does look like a pattern flip. So here's your big Atlantic ridge currently taking place. Some questions has arisen about how this ridge kind of behaves, okay? Though the center of the ridge is near Maine, you have this low pressure right here, which is causing cold air advection, and you also have another kind of Gulf ridge down here, Gulf high, better described, which is closer, bringing in warmer and more moist air. Basically, the closer to the source you are, the more warm air you're going to get. And this is more of a flat high, so it's more impacted by this high in the south and this low up to the north in portions of eastern Canada. So we watch that ridge. It pushes out. There's your little cold air dump after the first system. Could get some moderation late into the weekend. Could be a nice weekend. We'll see if we can get some uptrends with that. Monday, Tuesday. Monday mainly should be a little warmer. Mainly Sunday. And then it starts to get cold. I mean, this is a very big dump. We're watching this one trough, okay? Now, what do I like about this threat? This means winter weather isn't done for the east, so to speak, okay? First, you have this ridge that flexes in the west, so you get a positive PNA. Pacific North Atlantic Oscillation. Now you also have a Gulf of Alaska low, GOAK, which helps to provide downstream amplification of any low pressure systems that come from west to east. Okay, that's diving down. Allows northern stream energy to phase with southern stream energy. Then you get this trough. Now this trough is very, very quick. Okay, it comes down, lifts up. Okay, it could be lifting up even before the cities. That's why any winter weather is heavily favored climatologically for the interior northeast. Okay, so I-95 DC to Boston, New York City a little closer to recall, but DC to Philly at least, it's going to be hard to squeeze out any snow. But we'll watch it. It quickly lifts up 8 a.m. Once you get into Wednesday morning, you get another little moderation, and then another little system, more looks like almost a clipper, comes down Wednesday. So it's going to be, basically, the warmer air right now is not going to be sustained. We're going to get colder air that kind of dives down transiently, meaning it won't be any sustained either. It won't stay for several days, maybe 2 to 3 days max, and then you'll get another little 1 to 2 day warm period, 2 to 3 days cold air, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how it's going to work out. But you'll have warmer air with frequent cold shots, basically, through the rest of March, honestly, as we get to late in the month. So that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Just went over short range, long range, and what to expect. I'll see you guys possibly tomorrow, more likely on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one.